Belgium is a relatively small country in northwestern Europe that has historically been the so-called battlefield of Europe, as many wars have been waged there, even when the country itself had tried to be neutral. Today, Brussels is not only the country's capital, but is also host to both the headquarters of NATO and the main executive body of the European Union. Belgium is neither a major power nor, now, a so-called frontline state, as it has become distant from potentially hostile borders with Russia and its ally Belarus. So, what part does Belgium play with regard to European defense? To answer that question, we'll look at Belgium's defense capabilities and how it can contribute to the defense of its allies. We'll also look at the challenges facing Belgium in terms of defense, a huge part of which can be attributed to consistently low defense spending since the end of the Cold War. We have to be realistic and manage expectations when it comes to smaller countries' defense capabilities. But we'd also like to know if they're doing enough relative to their potential. The Kingdom of Belgium is relatively small, with 11.8 million people, but that's enough for it to rank 12th in population among NATO members. So there are 20 other allies with even fewer people. Belgium has one of the smallest areas, though, at just under 30,700 square kilometers, or nearly 11,850 square miles, ranking 27th of 32 in NATO. The land of good chocolate and good beer has an economy valued at nearly 600 billion euros, or over $630 billion, in 2023, which ranks it 11th in all of Europe. Belgium is roughly divided into two main areas in terms of language, and the country has three official languages. About 60% of the population primarily speak Dutch, mostly in the Flemish region in the northern part of Belgium that borders the Netherlands. Nearly 40% of the population primarily speak French, particularly in Wallonia, the southern part that borders France, and also the majority in Brussels, although the capital is just inside the Flemish region and officially a bilingual city. And the third official language is German, primarily spoken by less than 1% of the population in a small area called East Belgium next to Germany. Military officers are trained to be bilingual in Dutch and French. There are units that are only Dutch-speaking or French-speaking. For centuries, Belgium has been, in a more literal way, a battleground state. It's a long list, but mentioning just a few of the battles fought in Belgium, you've probably heard of some of them. Waterloo. At the time still part of the early 19th century, short-lived United Kingdom of the Netherlands, but one of history's most well-known and decisive battles, was waged on what was and is Belgian territory. Passchendaele, the third of a series of battles around the Belgian town of Ypres, where hundreds of thousands of men were lost on each of the warring sides. The Battle of the Bulge, or the Ardennes Offensive, the Nazis' desperate failed counteroffensive toward the end of the Second World War. For a small country on the northwestern corner of the European continent, Belgium has played hapless host to more than its fair share of wars and battles among powers in modern history. Belgium's neutrality went for naught during the First World War. Some of the most horrific battles of World War I were fought in Belgium. 1 million Belgian refugees fled to neighboring the Netherlands, whose neutrality the warring parties did observe. As the clouds of a Second World War gathered, Belgium tried neutrality again. After all, Nazi Germany had given its guarantee of neutrality to Belgium in 1937, declaring that the German government, blah, 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 confirms, blah, 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 that it will at all times respect Belgian territory. This turned out to be as good as the piece of paper Neville Chamberlain had signed with Hitler, which made the then British Prime Minister declare peace about a year before the outbreak of the Second World War. The French had set up fortifications along its border with Germany in what was known as the Maginot Line, which was supposedly impregnable. The Nazis bypassed it by going through neutral Belgium in the north, invading the country in May 1940, the same time as it did neutrals the Netherlands and Luxembourg. Months after the D-Day landings, the Allies would retake Brussels and return the Belgian government to power in September 1944 and fully liberate Belgium by February 1945, a few months before the end of the Second World War in Europe. Having started out non-aligned in two world wars in the 20th century, but only to be invaded and occupied, Belgium abandoned neutrality and became one of the 12 founding members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in 1949. NATO's original headquarters were in Paris, but when then President Charles de Gaulle withdrew France from the alliance's integrated command structure in 1966, NATO moved its headquarters to Brussels in the following year. 15 years after the end of the Second World War, Belgium would lose its vast African colony known as the Belgian Congo in 1960 to an independence movement. The independent country became known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo in 1964. Belgium was part of the so-called Inner Six, along with France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany, that founded the European Communities, which first started with coal and steel industries integration that came into force in 1952. This would greatly evolve and expand over the decades to become the European Union in 1993, which to date counts 27 member countries. Brussels is regarded as the de facto capital of the EU, as the city hosts the European Commission, the EU's main executive arm, and other bodies, although the EU Parliament is in Strasbourg, France. This has made the Belgian capital the stand-in for the European Union, and why the mantra for critics of the EU is to blame Brussels. Like other European countries, Belgium had significantly larger armed forces during the Cold War, compared with at present. The Belgian army had 2 divisions near the end of the Cold War. It had more than 300 Leopard 1 tanks, and just over 1,000 M113 series tracked vehicles, roughly split between armored personnel carriers and armored infantry fighting vehicles. The Belgian Air Force was one of the first European operators of the F-16 and ordered 160 in the A and B variant. The Belgian Navy operated 4 frigates for escort duties. It also had 10 Tripartite-class mine hunters, locally designated as the Astor-class, as the Belgians specialized in mine warfare. Long known as the battlefield of Europe, Belgian forces had stood shoulder to shoulder with their NATO allies on the West German front lines, facing off against Communist, Soviet, and other Warsaw Pact forces. When the Cold War ended in the late 20th century and potentially hostile borders moved way eastward as NATO found new allies, Belgium well and truly embraced its newfound all-encompassing security. Belgium is now ensconced among allies, with the Netherlands to its north, France to its south, a far more friendly Germany to its east, as well as tiny Luxembourg, and across the English Channel, the United Kingdom. Belgium then went on to significantly cut its armed forces and its defense spending over the next decades. After the Cold War, the Belgians deployed military contingents, along with their allies for expeditionary operations such as in the Balkans in the 1990s, in Afghanistan in the 2000s. Within NATO borders, the Belgians have sent F-16s for Baltic air policing and ground forces for NATO Enhanced Forward Presence, or EFP battle groups in the Baltic states and in Romania. Now let's look at what the Belgians do have for their defense and to contribute to NATO. In 2022, the Belgians, instead of calling the branches of their armed forces as Army, Air Force, and Navy like everybody else, renamed them the Land Component, Air Component, and Naval Component, respectively. There's also a separate medical component. The Belgian Land Component, or its army, has 2 main combat formations, the Special Operations Regiment and the Motorized Brigade. While neighbor the Netherlands has forged close army ties with Germany, Belgium's land forces have become close with those of France. The Special Operations Regiment, which has 1,500 personnel, includes the Special Forces Group, the 2nd Commando Battalion, and the 3rd Parachute Battalion. The Special Forces Group is an elite unit whose origins can be traced back to World War II and the formation of the 5th Special Air Service, composed of Belgian volunteer soldiers who trained in England as part of the British SAS. The Special Forces Group currently includes specially trained personnel in airborne, amphibious, and mountain operations. The other 2 battalions, the Special Operations Regiment, are paratroopers, with the Belgian quirk being that the 2nd Commando Battalion is French-speaking, and the 3rd Parachute Battalion Dutch-speaking. Belgium has lost its tracks. The Belgian military started the move away from tracked vehicles in the late 2000s when it adopted the Piranha 3C 8-wheeled armored vehicles. 242 of these vehicles, an APC, 30mm cannon and 90mm cannon variants and various support types, replaced armored vehicles including Leopard 1 tanks, M113 APCs, and M113-derived armored infantry fighting vehicles. Belgium thus followed France's lead to go wheeled, eschewing tracked armored fighting vehicles. But the Belgians also got rid of their tanks, unlike the French who retained theirs. The Piranha Series 8x8s started to enter service in 2008, but only a decade later, Belgium launched a program that would replace those vehicles. In 2018, in cooperation with France, Belgium launched a program called CAMO, which stands for Motorized Capacity in French. This would define development of Belgium's largest fighting unit, the Motorized Brigade, which has 7,500 personnel, is an atypically large formation for a brigade, with 6 maneuver battalions, 4 infantry, and 2 cavalry. To equip this unit, Belgium has ordered 382 VBMR Griffin-wheeled armored personnel carriers and 60 EBRC Jaguar wheeled armored fighting vehicles. Both the Griffin and Jaguar are part of France's Scorpion Army Vehicle Modernization Program. The Griffins are to be delivered between 2025 to 2030. These are 25-ton, 6-wheeled armored trucks armed with remote-controlled machine guns. The Griffin is a relatively inexpensive troop transport that Belgium has been able to procure in not insignificant numbers, but it's not a fighting vehicle. It would be at a huge disadvantage if it encounters, instead of insurgent types, NATO's adversaries that have more powerful autocannons and which would at the same time be impervious, at least in the frontal arc, to the Griffin's machine guns. These are sufficient for peacekeeping or counterinsurgency missions, but Belgian troops have nothing else to use as infantry fighting vehicles in a so-called peer conflict. Belgium is also procuring 24 MIPAC 120mm mortar systems, which will be mounted on the Griffin. The Motorized Brigade's cavalry units will be equipped with 60 Jaguars, also a 6-wheeled platform, but custom-built as a reconnaissance and fighting vehicle. These pack considerable firepower, including an innovative 40mm cannon that uses case-telescoped ammunition and a twin-tube launcher for France's new Acheron MP anti-tank guided missiles. The remote weapon station is also built around a capable sensor unit. Both the Griffins and Jaguars are deployable with a 400M transport aircraft that Belgium operates. Belgium uses the Caesar NG truck-mounted 155mm howitzer. Belgium will upgrade its artillery capability with a plan to buy 19 additional Caesars, made by defense company Nexter KNDS. This will bring the land component's Caesar fleet up to 28 units. Belgium currently has very limited ground-based air defense assets. There is only a short-range air defense battalion equipped with 36 Mistral man-portable air defense systems that have a range of several kilometers. There is a project, though, to acquire a long-range air defense system. Belgium is reportedly expected to choose the French-Italian SAMP-TNG system, the latest version of the European competitor to the much more popular U.S. Patriot system. These are expected to provide protection to Belgian seaports and other transport facilities, such as in a hypothetical armed conflict in Europe, where reinforcements from overseas are expected. This is Defense Index. If you find you like the content, please like and subscribe. The Belgian Air Component, formerly known as its Air Force, operates all of the fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. Belgium currently operates 45 F-16AM fighters, plus 9 F-16BM conversion trainers, which had undergone a midlife upgrade, or MLU. These are being phased out, though, in a process that should be completed by 2028. To replace its aging F-16s, Belgium has ordered 34 F-35A strike fighters. The first pair of the stealthy Lightning IIs should be delivered in 2024, and then at 4 or 5 aircraft each year until 2030, when all 34 F-35s would have been delivered by U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin. The Belgian Air Component does have a robust air transport capability, having taken delivery of all 7 A400M Atlas transport aircraft it had ordered from Airbus. An eighth unit acquired by neighbor Luxembourg is jointly operated by that country and Belgium. Belgium has also acquired two A330 multi-role tanker transports, or MRTT, that are operated as part of a 10-aircraft fleet under the NATO multinational MRTT unit, or MMU, based in the Netherlands. Belgium currently has 8 NH-90 medium helicopters and 10 A109BI light helicopters. The Belgian air component, though, is about to renew its helicopter fleet. 4 NH-90 maritime helicopters will be upgraded with new sensors and other enhancements. But only those maritime helicopters in its small NH-90 fleet will be retained, with the other 4 NH-90s used as troop transports to be withdrawn from service due to high operational costs. The 10 Augusta A109 are due to be retired. Under the Light Utility Helicopter Program, Belgium selected the Airbus H145M twin-engine light helicopter in 2024 to replace both the A109s and the troop transport variant NH-90s. 15 H145Ms will be acquired. Belgium will also procure 4 search and rescue, or SAR helicopters. Belgium's potentially largest military helicopter acquisition project will be for at least 4 and possibly up to 10 heavy transport helicopters. Boeing's CH-47F Chinook is expected to be the favorite. The Benelux countries also have a special air policing arrangement to protect their airspace, with the Belgian air component and the Royal Netherlands Air Force taking turns in each making available 2 fighters that can be launched under NATO control as quick reaction alert aircraft. Belgium will acquire 2 MQ-9B Sky Guardian unmanned aircraft systems, including 4 aircraft and 2 sets of ground control equipment. The system, made by U.S. company General Atomics Aeronautical Systems, is a development of the Reaper. The Sky Guardian has a flight endurance of more than 40 hours and is equipped with the Lynx multimode radar and an electro-optical infrared system. The 80th UAV Squadron of the Belgian Air Component will operate the Sky Guardians. The navies of the Netherlands and Belgium have been operating together since 1996 under what's called the Admiralty Benelux, where they coordinate training, procurement, logistics, and maintenance. The commander of the Royal Netherlands Navy heads the Joint Command, and the commander of the Belgian Naval Component is the deputy. The Belgian Naval Component operates 2 Doorman-class frigates, bought secondhand from the Netherlands in 2007 and 2008. These 3,300-ton multi-purpose, or M frigates, originally entered service with the Dutch Navy in the early 1990s. There are 5 surviving 570-ton Tripartite-class minehunters that date back to 1986 to 1990. Belgium has maintained a mine countermeasures capability since the Cold War, and this will be significantly upgraded, as we'll see shortly. Lastly, there are 2 Castor-class coastal patrol vessels, commissioned in the 2010s. These are small 450-ton ships, lightly armed with machine guns, that monitor Belgium's exclusive economic zone. That's it. It's a small naval component with around 1,300 personnel. Belgium's future naval warfare capability will be based around the replacements to its 2 main ship classes. The 2 old Doorman-class frigates, renamed the Leopold I and the Louise Marie, will be replaced by 2 new anti-submarine warfare, or ASW frigates, by 2030 and 2032. This is a joint program with the Netherlands, which will also acquire 4 of the ASW frigates. The Netherlands leads this program. Aside from the usual weaponry and sensors expected of ASW frigates, the ships will carry uncrewed surface vessels equipped for anti-submarine operations. Dutch shipbuilder Doorman will produce the hulls in its shipyard in Romania, and the systems fitted out in the Netherlands. There's sometimes talk of Belgium acquiring a 3rd frigate, but to date, there's nothing official on that. Under the RMCM program, to replace the mine countermeasures vessels of both Belgium and the Netherlands, the Belgian naval component will, from 2025 to 2030, take delivery of 6 next-generation mine countermeasure ships called the City-class. At 2,800 tons, these are significantly larger and much more capable than the 570-ton Tripartite-class minehunters that they will replace. The City-class are 6 motherships that can perform mine countermeasures operations at a standoff range, as they can launch and recover uncrewed surface vessels, or USVs, which themselves can carry smaller autonomous underwater vehicles or sensors. The City-class ships can also deploy uncrewed underwater vehicles, or UUVs, as well as aerial drones. This is a joint program with the Netherlands, which will also acquire 6 of their own ships under the Vlissingen-class designation. The Belgians lead this program. The ships are being built by France's naval group, while the ECA group provides the suite of unmanned systems. The next-generation mine countermeasures ships would allow Belgium and the Netherlands to provide a specialist capability if needed in areas such as in the relatively shallow waters of the North Sea and the English Channel, and, in some scenarios, possibly off the coasts of Norway, in the Baltic Sea, and other maritime areas. The French have also signed a partnership agreement that could lead toward them procuring their own 6 mine countermeasures vessels of this type. This could yet turn out to be the unofficial sequel to the Tripartite-class program, which also involved the Netherlands, Belgium, and France, that produced a large number of mine hunters in the 1980s to 1990s. And lastly, a third Castor-class coastal patrol vessel will enter Belgian service in 2027, but this ship class is only for Coast Guard-type duties. In 2022, Belgium also established a cyber command, which will protect the country's military and civilian digital systems. It is planned to be expanded and, after the land, air, naval, and medical components, the cyber command will eventually become the 5th component of the Belgian armed forces. Whatever the state of its own military, Belgium has a key role to play in what's called reception, staging, and onward movement, or RSOM, which is to receive NATO reinforcements from allies across the pond and the Channel, including forces and supplies from the United States, the United Kingdom, and also Canada. Antwerp has one of the busiest seaports in Europe. This is similar to the role of the Netherlands, where the port city of Rotterdam is also a key European transport hub. After all, Rotterdam is the largest and Antwerp the second largest among the seaports in Europe. Belgium, as a host nation to reinforcements from overseas, can provide facilities, force protection, and contribute, albeit modestly, to securing nearby maritime areas. It can also provide military and civilian logistics experts to receive and move along incoming American, British, and Canadian personnel and equipment. Looking at Belgium's defense spending, based on their commitment as a NATO member, the short of it is that they have come short. After the 2014 NATO summit reaffirmed the Allies' commitment to spend on defense the equivalent of at least 2% of their GDP, Belgium was one of many NATO members that, to put it bluntly, practically chose to ignore it. From 2014 to 2024, based on NATO figures, Belgium's defense spending has ranged from less than 1% of its GDP, 0.89% to be exact, to a high, if you can call it that, of 1.3% for the latest 2024 estimate. In terms of value, at over 7.9 billion euros, or 8.5 billion US dollars, according to NATO estimates for 2024, Belgium does spend more than several less affluent NATO members, with smaller economies, but as a share of its GDP, Belgium's defense spending is the second lowest in all of NATO. Second only after tiny neighbor Luxembourg, which, while we won't discuss here, has actually received a NATO exception, as they were allowed to base theirs on gross national income, or GNI, instead. So, when does Belgium expect to meet its 2% NATO obligation? At the 2023 NATO summit in Madrid, Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo expressed his country's determination to meet its obligation by, wait for it, 2035. Yes, we'll have to wait for it. The Belgian government in February 2022, a day after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine started, had set the aim for Belgian defense spending to increase to 1.54% of GDP by 2030, and for it finally reach the 2% mark by 2035. From 3 compliant members in the 2014 summit, 23 out of 32 NATO members will meet or exceed the 2% mark in 2024. Not only is Belgium one of several countries that still won't, but it expects to meet its NATO spending commitment only by 2035. There are around 28,000 personnel across the Belgian armed forces. Like most European countries did shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Belgium suspended conscription a couple years later and demobilized most of the country's military units. Belgium has also since struggled with recruiting and retaining military personnel, again a continent-wide trend for the past few decades. Belgium drew up something called the STAR Plan, which stands for Security, Service, Technology, Ambition, and Resilience, to map out its defense outlook from 2022 to 2030. Although the STAR Defense Plan was published after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, so it is mentioned, but the plans appear to have been drawn up before the outbreak of that war and its impact. To date, as the Russo-Ukrainian War approaches the 3-year mark, the Belgian plan has not been updated. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 caused a dramatic shift in the defense outlook of the European continent, although in Belgium's case, it has not demonstrated urgency in increasing its defense spending to meet its NATO commitment, as it has only pledged to reach the 2% of GDP mark by 2035. According to the Belgian government, it provided nearly 500 million euros in total aid to Ukraine in 2022 to 2023. Belgium has allocated an additional 1.7 billion euros in aid to Ukraine for 2024 to 2025. To conclude, decades of unabashedly low defense spending has left Belgium with quite limited ability to help reinforce its allies in hypothetical armed conflict scenarios in NATO's eastern flank. For instance, while it will have capable wheeled reconnaissance vehicles, the bulk of their largest ground combat unit will be moving in essentially armored trucks with machine guns. Belgium's combat ability against NATO's so-called peer adversaries is quite limited. Belgium itself has little ability to reinforce its allies apart from contingents of special operators, or the provision of specialist capabilities such as mine warfare, or as follow-on forces, after some of its better-equipped allies have done the heavy fighting with their tanks and mechanized forces. Belgium needs more heavily armored, better armed forces if its ground forces are to contribute to a hypothetical armed conflict on NATO's eastern flank. Belgium's geography means it remains a key link for Allied reinforcements from overseas. Being a key logistics hub, it must be able to protect its own territory from attack. Ultimately, there are a few bright spots in Belgium's defense, but more generally, there are more dark spots than it should be comfortable with. It's not a major player, but Belgium had once stood with its allies on the front lines of the late 20th century. The time for complacency should be over. Belgium can and must do more and show greater urgency in an increasingly complicated security environment in the European continent and in the world. So, that's it for now. If you want to see more content about defense issues, your help in spreading the word about this channel would be really appreciated. And yes, please, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you and see you in the other videos here on Defense Index.